called Always Network. Always Network is an umbrella organization that supports charities up and down the country, established about 7 years ago now, actually, to support small to medium organizations, primarily around bid writing support. I'm trying to like level the playing field, if you like, because what the trustees at Always Network sort of realized, most of them were grant managers at large trusts. What they realized was the same old organizations, the same old faces were the ones who were getting funding from across the spectrum. So they wanted to sort of really put in a project like Always Network, which would help support the smaller, medium, those who are doing excellent work, but just sometimes miss out because they just don't have the know-how and the technical skills. So I think I came on board as a bid writer for them about 18 months ago now. And my role is primarily bid writing, but I also take part in training sessions where we do sessions like this. We have two sort of focuses really. Number one is to sort of do a generic bid writing, just anything around bid writing and the skills of bid writing. And then we have like focus sessions like today, which is what Diane and VAC asked for, which was particularly for the Awards for All grant. And it's a really good choice, actually, the Awards for All, because it's quite, it's quite relaxed in how they assess the grants. They give a lot of new groups opportunities. And it's a really brilliant introduction to grant writing. So it's a really good place to start. So we're going to go through today about an hour or so, maybe an hour and 15, on the process of completing the application form for the Awards for All. And then we'll have 15 or 20 minutes to catch up on question and answers, if anything's, things are not clear, or we can expand on things. I realize that might not be enough time at the end. So I'm more than happy for you to sort of submit your questions in the chat box. We'll collate all of them and we'll respond to them, and maybe we can put it all in a document so all of the questions can be answered and sent out to each and every one of you towards the end of the session. So yeah, any questions, like I said, we will take them at the end, but do feel free to sort of, jot them down in the chat so, you don't forget, and we don't forget to answer them obviously as well. Okay, so going through the actual form and the process of the grant. We're going to try to give some examples as well. I know everyone here, like, it's people have got different remits and focus for their charity groups. So obviously, I've chosen a youth group, and, people here might come from different sort of backgrounds, but it's just generic, and it's just to sort of explain how we go about completing an application form. Okay, I've got to get my technology to work. Okay. Okay, so the agenda for today. We're going to work through the application form, especially the key parts of it. There's 2 to 3 key parts of the application form. So it isn't strenuous, the Awards for All. We'll go through a step-by-step guide on completing the form. We'll go through some example answers. We'll go through things that work really well, that Awards for All have commented on. Previous applications have been successful, what actually works. And we'll also go through some sections where, some areas where there's a lot of the same mistakes, if you like, are made again and again. So things to avoid. And then we'll obviously have the Q&A at the end. It is going to be pretty quick paced, just by the nature of our time. So you have to, I apologize if I go a little bit too fast for people. Okay, I'm hoping everybody can see the screen and it's clear. Who can apply? Pretty much everybody that probably is in this room can apply. They have a really wide remit in terms of organizational structure and legal structure. Constituted voluntary, you don't have to be a charity. You can be a constituted group or a voluntary group, and you can be a CIC or CIO, a not-for-profit company as well. They've recently increased their amounts as well from £10,000 maximum to £20,000 maximum. And what they've done is, in the past, they used to be £10,000 for 1 year. Now you can apply for 20,000 over 2 years. So you can, for example, you could apply for 16,000, 8,000 to be spent in the first year and 8,000 in the second year. So it's a really, really good pot of money that's available. There's always limitations. These are the limitations in terms of organizing, and these are pretty standard across the funding world, if you like. It's, organizations that generally are not set up for not-for-profit. As well as obviously if you've had a current national lottery or another, so other lottery would be heritage lottery or reaching communities. So those type of grants, if you already hold grants, then they won't allow you to apply. Okay, so in the application form itself, we have these sort of 4 or 5 key sections that we have to demonstrate to the Awards for All panel. And as the key one is the project details, and we'll talk about it. But these make the basis of the application. Some are very straightforward. Most of the form is actually quite straightforward. It really isn't a massively technical form to complete. And we'll go through each section and talk about what exactly goes into each of those sections. It's an online process, which means you've got to have a little bit of technical knowledge in terms of computers, setting up a username and password, logging in. They don't have any deadlines, which is good. It's a rolling process, so you can apply at any time, but they do have times when the board sits. So generally, you can expect a decision within 16 weeks. So you should allow for up to 16 weeks. So when you are applying, apply sort of 4 to 6 months in advance of your project. So, projects that obviously are coming on now, you'd be looking at a December/January start. Okay, and that's really important because some people, will apply today for starting next month, and it doesn't really work like that. So really plan that out. Start applying now for, say, January is a good time right now. If you are applying, April is also a good time. It gives you plenty of time to receive the funds and be able to plan your project. Okay, so we're going to break down each of these sections into a little bit more detail. Project summary. Okay, in the outline, they just ask you very simply for a project name and a brief description of your project. I've done this before. I'm unsure actually if they've taken that brief description out, but I need to recheck that. But they definitely ask you for a project name. And they're looking for something fairly snappy, short, concise, to the point. So you could have something like that. We've gone for our example today, a youth leadership development program. Simple project name. You can have a little bit more, something more snazzy, but it should generally illustrate the sort of project that you're thinking about. And a description would be exactly, very particular, targeted, telling them exactly what it is. Once they've read that, they should really understand in that sentence or two exactly what it is that you're trying to do. The word count, by the way, is really important, and it's illustrative of exactly the sort of information or the length of information they want. Okay, so a brief overview of the project you're going to do, who it's aimed at, and the sort of time frame that you're looking at delivery would be a really good brief description. And obviously you're going to go into more detail into the next step. So project details. Now this forms a series of, I think 3 questions we've got. And this is the most important part of the entire form. You get project details right. This is what the panel will judge you on. Okay, yes, after this, it comes the budget, and that will get taken into account. And applications are rejected on budget and even organizational details, which we'll go into. But the biggest reason for rejection of applications is this section's not right. This step 2, project details. So it's really important now that the information that we're going to speak about in the next sort of 20 minutes around will all focus on project details. Okay. The first question that you'll get asked on project details is, what would you like to do? Okay. And they want 300 words on exactly what you'd like to do. The questions that I've illustrated there underneath that are not asked in the application form. They're not asked, but that's what they want you to answer. In 300 words, you have to do all of them. I'll try to break that up a little bit. It's almost, you're looking at 50 words per sub-question, if you like, right? Now, sometimes it's not going to be exactly 50 words. You might put what difference your project will make, that 3rd bullet point. You might do 75 words for that one, which means you'll have to cut off somewhere else. All of those questions, and their guidelines, by the way, have to be answered in the 300 words, all of those mini questions. Right? And I'm going to give you, we'll go through a little bit of an overview of how we might do that. Okay, so I just want you to remember those. What will the project do? Who will benefit and how? What difference? We're going to answer all of those step by step. The question they're ultimately answering is, what would you like to do? That's the ultimate thing we have in our minds. You won't believe it. I've been doing bid writing for the best part of nearly 20 years now. And I've read application forms where they've asked a question like this, and at the end of it, I don't know what they're trying to do. Okay. And we cannot leave any doubts to a funding panel once they've read this from us. What is it that we're trying to do? It has to be crystal clear, right? Whether they fund it or not is a different question altogether, whether it's something that they want to fund, but there should be absolute clarity on what is it that this organization is asking us to do. Because sometimes people here just get really carried away into things like, our organization been going for 6 years and we've had this struggle and that struggle and we've done this and we've done that. And it's not, they just want to know, what is it that you want to do? At this point, they don't want to know about like sort of organizational struggle or 6 years or things like that, right? There's a time for that. But this now is all about the project you want funding for. Okay. So what will the project do? Okay, so we've done a little bit of a summary there again. The project will deliver weekly workshops, very clear, and we've highlighted the particular areas that we want to do these weekly workshops on. Very clear. You're looking at 15, 20 words straight away. Okay, no doubt there on what we're doing and even the sort of time scale. Okay, the next one, who will benefit and how? A little bit more detail now. Okay, who will benefit? 50 young people. What about the 50 young people? They're from underrepresented communities, right? 2 areas where you're given a description about these young people. How are they going to benefit? They will gain leadership skills through workshops. They're going to receive personalized guidance through mentoring. And they'll be able to actively contribute to community projects. How else will they benefit? They're going to enhance their confidence, their employability skills, civic engagement, okay, and this sense of responsibility and leadership that they'll gain whilst taking part in these weekly workshops. Okay, we're looking at about 80 words there. We've got another 220 to play with for the other question. So this is still, remember, under the 300 word count for what will your project, what would you like to do? That's the question on the application form. What would you like to do? And these are the sub answers that we're going to give them. Continuing in the same theme, what difference will your project make? Okay, that's just important, really important question. Comes up again and again in application forms. Okay, is the difference that you'd like to do. The difference is really looking at the impact that the project will make. Okay, where are you taking the community that you're going to be working with? What is the journey that you're going to be taking them on? Where are they starting? And where will they end up? And what's that journey look like? And that's what they want to know here. Okay, so we're going to give these young people leadership skills and confidence. We're going to improve their employability and community involvement. And there's a little bit of an overlap, obviously, with what we've said before, but it's fine. We're going to foster responsibility and reduce social isolation. So we're going to introduce some of these, perhaps what you could call buzzwords. And that's exactly what they are. But it's important to talk in language that funders understand. We're going to create a group of young leaders who are going to contribute positively to society. Okay, so social cohesion, another buzz sort of word. And we're going to provide ongoing mentoring for the young people. Okay, they want to know how you're going to get the word out to the community. So we're going to promote it through local community centers. And here you could actually name, if you've got the words in there, you could actually name a couple or a couple of schools you could name, or you could say local primary schools, local high schools. And through our social media, we're going to do flyers and posters in key community spaces. And we'll collaborate with local organizations to spread the word. Again, you could name and highlight 1 or 2 that you might have really good working partnerships with. Okay. And again, the overall thing to remember here is 300 words. Right? Everything needs to fit into 300 words. So ultimately what we're doing here, we're going to highlight, if we can break it down into 3 project activities. Number 2 is our target beneficiaries. And number 3 is the time frame. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, we're going to highlight project activities, which is all the things that the community will be doing, if it's young people, if it's women, if it's elderly people. We're going to talk about the target beneficiaries, exactly who they are, what they'll be doing, which is the activities, and the time frame itself. Okay. When and how are we going to be doing it? Okay, and another question that comes up again and again is about learning and evaluation. So what are you going to do to collect information about your activities? So this is through feedback and surveys and evaluations. Okay, we can establish perhaps focus groups. We can take interviews with people, case studies and testimonials. So there's a number of ways that we can actually collect information from, and you'll just mention 1 or 2. Don't mention obviously all of the ones I've just mentioned. 1 or 2 that suit your project would suffice. Okay. And how are you going to actually learn from it, and then obviously put that into future projects. Okay, so how are you going to take down the key lessons that you learned from the project. And the other thing that they'd like to know is your dates. So what are the dates that you'll be running your session? So when do you want to start and when do you want to finish? So that is 300 words in the first section, and that's the first thing pretty much that the Awards for All panel will read of your application. If that starts off good, the rest of the application should flow nicely. Okay, have to clear at this point. These 4 or 5 bullet points that we've mentioned in 300 words, we have to encapsulate our entire project, our beneficiaries, our activities, and the time frame that we're going to deliver them in. Okay, and again, just to stress, this is the most critical part of the project. And one of the things that I would advise is that just really read it, recheck it, give it to somebody else to read, and ask them, what is it? Can you sum this up in 2 sentences? What is it that we're trying to do? And see if they give you the answer that you're looking for. Okay, it should be really, really clear. What is it that you're running? Like here now for us, young people workshops, really clear, mentoring, leadership, employability, right? You've got an idea, you've got a sense of it, okay? And that leads us nicely onto the second part of our project details question. So this is the second question that comes up on the form. How does your project meet our funding priorities? Okay, and so they want 150 words on funding priorities. And this is, you can come across this on the actual guideline forms on the Awards for All app, on website, sorry. And you've also got their 2030 strategy, right, which is really important to read, and we'll summarize it here. They've got 4 key priorities, and the projects must fit, all projects must fit into one of the 4 priorities. Priority number 1, bringing people together to build strong relationships in communities and across communities. This is the first priority that we have from. So your project, it has to fit 1. If it fits more than 1, it's all well and good, but it must fit 1. And that's the first one. Okay, so creating accessible or welcoming spaces, building communities. Now, what's really interesting about the Awards for All project is the focus is very much on communities, and the 2030 strategy really highlights this. So, for example, people will come out with a fantastic sports project and they'll talk all about the sports aspect of it, but it doesn't really talk about enough strength in the application about the community part. So Awards for All will fund a sports project, but they'll fund a sports project that has a community aspect. So you've got women who are taking part, for example, socially isolated women or elderly people taking part in a sports project. The emphasis is not the fact that they're taking part in sport, but the emphasis is on bringing these people together to sort of help them socially connect with other people. That's what they're looking for. Okay. Similarly, if you did an arts project, okay, the focus isn't on the art itself. Awards for All focus is on the community. So this must be at the focal point of your project, right? The community. It's all about the community. So initiating, engaging and inclusion activities. Okay, people from all backgrounds and shapes to maybe come together. You've got community cohesion type events, social events, cultural events. Anything like that would be fantastic for Awards for All. Anything that gives you an increased sense of belonging or part of a community or some identity connected to a community, bringing people together. Okay, so that's the first one. So your project, when you think about projects for Awards for All, these are the things you'll be thinking about, right? How does it do this? Priority number 2. It's more about the places and spaces that matter to communities. So venues, allotments, gardens, parks, community buildings. So again, some sort of ideas across there, but improving natural environment, people getting together to address an issue in the local area. But it's less about the environment, more about people and the spaces that affect communities. So improving the quality of spaces. So it could be that you're doing something together in a community center, for example. Okay. So again, very much connected to communities. And you've got 150 words on this, by the way. Okay, so once you recognize the priority that you fall under, you'll then address how your project meets that particular priority in 150 words. So they're not looking for a massive amount of detail, but you'll just sort of highlight from these sort of bullet point areas exactly how your project meets this particular priority. Priority number 3, helping people to reach their potential by supporting them at the early stage. So this could be babies and young people, early intervention at any point, early intervention with employment, early intervention with substance misuse, early intervention at any point in people's lives to help them to reach their potential. Okay. So again, some ideas, helping people shape the decisions that affect them and their communities. Again, it would be very much the background is on communities, community experiences, and helping people through early intervention activities. Yeah. So it could be a project that tackles obesity, for example. So you're going to introduce exercise. You can do it early. You can do it at primary school. Or you can do it with young women, young mothers. As long as you can demonstrate this idea that you're going to do them at the earliest possible stage. And the 4th priority, supporting communities and organizations facing more demands and challenges because of the cost of living crisis. Again, less about, and it is demands and challenges that have been, so food banks would be an excellent idea here. I mean, Awards for All has done a lot around food banks and helping people access food, community kitchens, health, the knock-on effect that obviously COVID and the cost of living has had on health, people's health. So again, all of these type of projects, as long as we can show that communities are facing more hardships because of the cost of living and people are struggling. So any project that brings, advice, guidance, food provision, perhaps for communities would fit under this particular priority. Okay. And so them are the 4 areas that your particular project would look to address. Okay. So that's question number 2. Question number 3, how does your project involve your community? This is really important. 200 words. So we've now got 300 words for the what will your project do? 150 for priorities. That's 450 words. And 200 takes us up to 650 words. And that's going to make the bulk of your application. So these 3 major areas split into 3 questions will make your project details. And these 3 will be the most significant aspect of your Awards for All application. How does your project involve your community? 200 words. So the first thing we need to understand is what they mean by community. Okay, so people who live in the same area, people who have a similar interest or life experiences, but might not live in the same area. And schools can also be at the heart. So something around schools, so school parents, but they only fund schools that also benefit. So a school that has a community arm to them. For most people, it's the top 2. Okay, for most charities and not-for-profit groups, they'll be looking at. And the reason why they sort of select organizations, grassroots charities and grassroots not-for-profits is because the understanding that funders have is those are the type of organizations that best understand the needs of their community. And this is what they want to demonstrate, they want you to demonstrate here. You are better placed than people on the Votes for All panels to provide information about the community that affects you, the community that you live and work and perhaps have grown up in. So they want you to really highlight your community. And, in essence, they want to know how your community came up with the idea in the first place. Like, whose idea was this? How did this whole thing come about? This project that you're writing about? How many people have you spoken to? And the more they get an idea that this is a real community venture, the more they'll buy into the idea that it fits this idea of Awards for All community grant. The more they feel these are people in an office that are putting together what they think the community wants, the less likely they are to fund it. Okay, so the critical part of this is to really illustrate the connection that your group has with your community. And this takes a lot of and we do this, we do another training, which is called grant readiness. And in that training, I highlight and illustrate for organizations that there's a lot of pre-work that's to be done before you get to the grant stage. And part of the pre-work is establishing these connections with communities that you live in, talking to people, doing surveys and feedbacks and really finding out what people want. And then you can say, 80% of the young people we've spoken to told us XYZ, right? 90% of the women we spoke would like to, take part in yoga, aerobics, or whatever, whatever classes, yeah. Or the elderly people, young people have told us this, right? Or we're doing this sport because it'll bring different communities together. And we work with X community and X, Y community and Z community. And we've had an influx of, asylum seekers in our community or refugees in our, and we're going to do this project to bring people, because this is what they've told us, that they've not been able to meet people. Okay, so the more you can illustrate how you connected to your community, the bigger and better chance that you have of being successful in a project. And remember, this is people on the other side reading this. And I've had the privilege, if you like, of being on the other side. I'm a bid writer, but I've also sat on funding panels. And it's really interesting when you've got a funding panel member hat on, how they see things. And this is what they're looking for. They're really looking for people who are really connected. Okay. And connected at all stages. So connected in the idea, how did it come about? Whose idea was it? How did it come about? And also, once the project is running, how are they going to be involved in the delivery and in the involvement of the project? Like, are they, and this is Awards for All in particular, very keen on this, of having user involvement. So who's shaping it? So even from the name, like, who chose the name, right? And why 3 times a week? Why Saturday morning? Why are you delivering on evenings and not the mornings, or 2 mornings and 1 evening? Because what you want to be saying is, this is what the women, young people, men, elderly people, refugees, whatever your community is, this is what they want. This is what we've done. And we've piloted it, or we've tried it and it worked. So again, part of our grant readiness course illustrates the importance of actually trying things. And it might be at a cost to the organization because you've not got funding at that point, but if you can illustrate that you've actually given this a go and done a few sessions and worked really well, we had like 70 people turn up, or 40 people, or 20 people, whatever number, and it worked really well. And this is what they told us that was good. And this is what they, and this is why we're putting this application in. That would hold really well with the funding application, because it shows the level of engagement that you've had with your community, which is key in every Awards for All application. Okay, so if we can understand that, and we can get on side with community involvement and community benefit, you're going to have I believe, a really, really good chance of being successful with the Awards for All grant. Really good chance. Okay. So I've tried to put something together again. It's a lot of words. I apologize for that. I'm trying to fit it all onto one slide here, which sort of illustrates the question that we were asked. How does your project involve your community? 200 words. I'm not sure how many I did that, but I could only fit as many on the screen. I should actually count that and see how much that is. But the project has been designed following input from young people. You can see the first line I've introduced there, that this is an endeavor by the young people themselves, okay, and by community members. And it addresses their needs, and it addresses their issues that they're facing. Okay. And then we talk a little bit about the mentors and the role models, and they're from that community too. Okay. We've also spoken about young people giving back to their community. So this very sense of, community that we're putting forward, pride in their local environment, right? So we've got mentors supporting young people to then become future mentors. We're going to hold feedback sessions. Again, this is then trying to introduce this idea that throughout the project, young people will be able to feedback. In other words, they own the project. This is the young people's project. This isn't, even though it's the charity name here, Always Network are going to be, having the funding come through to Always Network, and we're going to be managing it. But really, we're sort of trustees managing this project, but the actual stakeholders, if you like, are the young people themselves. This project is owned and delivered by the young people. This is the sense that Awards for All want to have, is that really it's the wider community that's involved with the project itself. Okay. And then we've introduced this idea that young people will set up a steering group on the project. So they'll be able to meet with each other, say what's going well, what's not going well, make the changes that they want to make. Okay. Yeah, and again, we've given some benefits again of the project at the end there about what it actually means to involve the community, and what the result of involving the community and young people will be. Okay, so that's the type of answer that they're looking for. Okay, this idea of user groups, focus groups, steering groups, young people have been involved. You could actually have things like, we did a consultation with 15 young people as a sample, and this is what they've told us that they wanted. And this is the reason why we're running it on weekends, and this is the reason why we're doing it like this. Or we put out an evaluation that went out to 200 community members on Google Forms. And this is what we got back. And this, by the way, is a really good practice. I've really encouraged organizations in the past to put out these type of case studies and reach out to their community members and ask evaluations, ask, I've been involved in organizations where we've put in evaluations to, and you only get a percentage back, but 500 people were sent out a link to complete a form, and it was disconnected to any funding application. But I knew that the data we'd get back from that would be invaluable for future applications. And that's exactly what happened. We got about 75. So it wasn't a lot out of 500. 75 returned the form, telling us how they found the services. And I just sort of, extrapolated figures from there. So I could say 80% have said that, they rated us 4 and above in our delivery, things like that. So having data is going to be really important, because most project bids want data. And so collecting data is really important, really important. Okay, so that's the project details complete. So we're looking at 650 words in total. And like I said, it's the critical and the most important section is those 650 words split into 3 distinct areas. Okay, and then we move on to a separate section, all right, which is budgeting. Okay. And so when we are speaking about our project, it's really important that whatever we're speaking about in the project information itself is then correlated to the budget. So for example, I had a funder once, really interesting, said to me that in the project description, what we've just spoken about, the organization mentioned that they were taking young people on a trip, which was 25 miles away. And in the actual budget, there was no mention of transport. And they rejected it. And I said to the funder, excuse me, I said to the funder, I felt that was a little bit harsh. Like, you could have just maybe asked the question that, like, how are you getting them there? Or, there's no mention of the transport for this trip that they were making. And the funder blatantly just said to me, we just don't have time to ask those questions. It just didn't match up, and we just rejected it, right? On the back of what felt like they said was a decent application. So it's really important that as you're making the project, as you're talking about the project, that on a side note, you're writing the budget. So if you're talking about volunteers, you should be writing in the budget section, volunteer expenses, DBS checks, right? If you're talking about project worker, budget section, project salary. You can work it out later, but as long as the project description that you've just spoken about, what will the project do, matches. If you're taking people somewhere, transport. If you're marketing and doing, we've said marketing and flyers, let's put a budget down for marketing and flyers. Okay. So whatever you've mentioned in your project, make sure that it corresponds to your actual budget itself. Okay. They'll give you a breakdown of budget on all of the different headings, and they'll ask you for a small section of justification for each cost. Okay. I'm going to give you an example. And these don't correlate to anything. I've just sort of put the figures together, to be honest. But each of those would need a justification. And I've tried to summarize that at the end there. So workshop materials for effective workshops, which you probably, maybe don't, you want to actually write. For brevity, I've just left it like that. But really what you possibly want to say is what type of materials that you want. Try to go in a little bit of detail would be good, especially if you're asking for 2,000 pounds, as I am there. What type of materials you're going to need. Okay. And if it's mentor fees, again, is it travel? What are those fees? Break that down a little bit more. If you're paying salaries or if you're paying tutors, mention the hours and the hourly rate. Okay, on a weekly basis. So work here. So £20 per hour times 2 hours per week times 30 hours on the project, and give them the figure that it comes up to with NICs and any tax involved. So be thorough in your justification. Venue hire, again, I mean, I've just wrote venue for community gathering, but you'd want to almost say, £15 per hour, 15 hours per month, and then 6 months worth of venue hire. So you'd really want to break that down a little bit, so they're very clear. Project management, likewise, that could be at a percentage. They allow an organization to have a percentage up to about 4, maybe 5% is reasonable of your management time that you'd spend to supervise the project. Okay. But again, I'm not putting there marketing, publicity, refreshments could be in there also. Travel costs I've not put in. Volunteer expenses would be something else you could put in. So there's a whole range of things that you could put in. It's an overview of the type of things that they're happy to consider for budgets and the type of things that they won't consider. So general project costs are absolutely fine. And small capital costs, by the way, are fine. So maybe, a tablet or a laptop would be fine. But generally things that are very directly related. And remember, these are experienced people. They see millions of pounds worth of applications year on year. They have a good sense of how much things cost and what's reasonable. So, be realistic with the budgets. There can be issues around budgets when people are generally speaking, unrealistic. And when there's obvious omissions as well. Okay, or you've put something in that doesn't correlate to that. So both ways, you've left something out that should be in, or you've put something in that they can't track. So you've put transport in, but your project mentions nothing about transport. The other way also, So it's really important to be, to be good on the budget side of things. But what's for all are really good. I mean, there's, they're quite, they're supportive of organizations that don't have a huge amount of turnover. So there's a brilliant first step for funding applications. Other funders, they'll only fund up to 50% of your annual turnover. Okay, so if your annual turnover is, say, for example, 30,000, they won't give you more than 15,000 per year. Okay, awards for all are slightly different. They recognize that some organizations come to them having never had funding experience before, so they will give you a bit of a lift like that, and they would consider, if you've got all the other things in place, they would consider applications from organizations that don't have a huge amount of turnover, but this is almost their first application. So awards for all, and this is why when Diane mentioned it at VAC, I thought it's a really good choice because it is an excellent first step application. It really is. So you've got to also tell them when you are doing the application, everything that's related to your project, even things that you're not asking them to fund. So for example, let's say for the argument's sake, the application that you're making is for £25,000. Okay, you can only ask for 20,000 from them, but they want to know the full 25. What's the other five as well, even though you're not asking for funding, because they'll ask you how much do you want for What's for All. So the breakdown, you can show them that it's actually costing, this project costs 30,000, for example, or 25,000. We're only asking for 20,000 from What's for All, but they want to know the full figure. Most people who apply for What's for All apply for the full figure at 20,000 or under. So, generally that's, I would say at first step, that's better. Apply for the full funding from them and make it a project that would fit into the £20,000 bracket. Okay. So we've got project details is the first section, budget is the second, organizational details is the third. Okay, and this is pretty much it for Awards for All. It's not like I said, it's not an intensive application. This section is really all about accuracy, and it's about providing organizational details, the basic information correctly. Anything that's not done accurately at this stage will just delay your application. Okay, so it's really important that you get this bit right. And things like the charity number, the organizational group setup you did, it matches up with Charities Commission. Because one of the first things that you'll find funders do when you send them an application is, even before sometimes reading the application, they will check on Charities Commission or wherever the legal structure of the organization is registered. They'll check there first to make sure that everything is above board. Your accounting is on track. Now, there's been organizations that I've worked with that have had red flags. They'll come up as overdue accounts. They've submitted their accounts late. That's a really, really problematic area for funders. If your accounts are late, you're going to struggle to, and it has to be a very, very good application and possibly a very good justification about why those were submitted late. So, you really need to have your accounting up to date and submitted on time every year for you to have a really good chance of funding. They'll assess organizations that perhaps pose a financial risk, okay, and mismanagement of funds, which has happened many a time. So obviously funders are extremely wary of organizations that aren't set up in the right way, okay? And part of what we mean by that is accounting, but also they need to have unrelated trustees. So they will check that on the Charities Commission, okay? That there's at least three unrelated members on the trustee panel. They'll check all your registration numbers. They'll definitely come back to you, either asking for more, querying things, or just outright rejection if there's seems to be things that don't match up. Okay, so the organization name, the contact details, and then what they'll do is they'll check it through with your social media and websites as well. Okay, including your address details. So social media and Charities Commission or the registration whole legal structure has to be completely sort of above board, if you like, and really, they want to see a really well functioning group, even if you're new, right? They want to see a group that's got, potentially, photos up on the social media. They will thoroughly research things that you said. If you've said this is what you're doing, this is your track record, this is your history on your website, they'll want to correlate that with any photos or pictures that they can see. If they don't see a lot, that's another area that they'll have issues with. They want to see a functioning organization. So it's important that there's up to date. You don't want a social media post that the last post you put on was like 6 months ago. And then there's intermittent and they can't really make out what's going on here. So a really lively, vibrant, engaging, because remember, you've already told them that you are at the heart of your community, that the community is deeply involved with your project. So they want to see some proof of that. So the organization, the social media side of things really needs to be good. The date your organization is set up, again, all of these things they'll ask you on the form, but it needs to be backed up with the exact same date. So this idea that there's one date that's different on this side, or contact name that's different on this side, and when they do the checks, it's different on the other side. Okay, really, we need to be very, very clear with this. I work with a lot of organizations with writing for organizations. So when I set up something for an organization, every time I work with a new, I have these as basic things, right? The key members, the key trustees, organization is that, date that they were set up, charities commission date that they set up, accounting end date that they set up. All of these are on, so each organization have the same, and I verify that. And once it's verified, then you're good to go, but it has to be verified and checked. Total income for the year, again, has to match up with what's on the Charities Commission website. And they want bank statements dated within 3 months. Okay, to know which account they want to pay into, and obviously that you've got authorization on behalf of the organization that you're applying for. Okay. If you don't have yearly accounts, in other words, you've only been set up less than 15 months, they're okay with that. What's for all, this one I'm saying, it's a really good first step. They can still look at your organization. They can still look at your project, sorry, and consider your application. Other funders won't look at you until you're at least 15 months old and you've had one level of accounts that have gone in. But awards for all, like I say again, it's good. They won't be able to assess your application if you don't have a bank account. Okay, and you'll have to reapply once you do have bank, because they need to pay the funding into obviously an organizational bank account. Okay. Senior contact. So as well as on the first form, they ask you about the main contact. The senior contact is a person who will be legally responsible. The main contact is the person who they'll contact for any queries around the awards for actual applications. That became manager, project officer. That's, that can be someone who actually works for the organization. But the senior contact, no. The senior contact is usually for, we're talking like chair, vice chair, secretary, trustee, a company director if it's a CIC, someone who's going to be legally responsible for the funding. Okay. They cannot be connected to the main contact. So they have to be two different people. Okay. So for example, a husband and wife, one can't be the main contact and the other the senior contact. Okay. Or anyone in a civil partnership or long-term relationship. And the role of the senior contact has to be clear. And again, the role of the senior contact must match up to the legal structure that they'll see on Charities Commission or on the CIC, on the registration documents. Okay, so these things are really important. So trustees, a CEO, chief executive officer, company director, company secretary, treasurer, all of these type of roles is the senior contact. And again, really important that people get this right. And I've seen instances where they'll just give staff names, and they're not looking for staff names. So the main contact can be, and the main contact email can be for any queries about the actual application form. Senior contact, and the senior contact email has to be for the person who's going to be legally responsible, the person who will sign off the project. When they send you the acceptance forms, it will be the senior contact who actually approves and accepts the grant on behalf of the organization. Okay, so really important. Okay, so that takes us almost through the entire application form. Apologies if I went a little bit quick there, but I was conscious that I wanted to get through most of it. Just got a couple of final slides that I want to speak about in terms of the application itself, more around sort of, the areas where people slip up, if you like, and perhaps the do's and don'ts that we can just bear in mind. So the pitfalls first, okay? The first section is all about the project details, okay? And there's often, as I've mentioned before, applications that I've read at the end of it, I'm still not sure exactly what they want to do. So this idea that, they've not mentioned 32 sessions, 32 weekly sessions, 50 young people, right? That's what they mean by clarity. What is it that you're actually trying to do? So clarity for your project beneficiaries, clarity around the project activities, and clarity around the time frame. Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Things like we'll have weekly sessions for 8 weeks, followed by a residential, right? Or we'll have 3 residentials, 3 months apart. Very clear, right? I can't be thinking, okay, where's their weekly sessions and there's residentials? Is that going to be one at the end, or is that, like they mentioned 4 residentials here, but it doesn't actually say when the residentials take place. Now, when's this trip to Blackpool that they've mentioned, right? So real clear project goals and project timescales. So, we can't leave the funders in any sort of sense of doubt, basically. Budget justifications don't make sense, right? The project seems like you can deliver it in sort of 7 to 10 hours a week, and you've asked for 25 hours per week. It just doesn't match up to the level of work that it seems is taking place. Or you've put something in very high for capital costs, and they can't really understand why that is. And you've only mentioned like maybe one laptop in there, but it's like £3,000 for that one laptop. Anything like that, anything that sort of would ring alarm bells. Ambitious timelines also, you promised to do a lot. And this is the other, I think, sort of major sort of misunderstanding that a lot of groups have, is that they feel like to have to impress the funder, they've got to give these, like, we're going to support, 4,500 people in 3 months or something like that. You don't have to do that. You can just be realistic. 80 young people's fine. They're not looking for massive numbers. They're looking for impact. They're looking for community involvement. They're looking for how you're established as a grassroots organization in your community, how well you know your community. That's far more important than numbers. Obviously, having a project for £10,000 and maybe just helping 20 young people is not going to be right either. So you have to have a good balance, but you don't have to go the other way where you're saying like 1,000 young people. Be realistic. Okay, so don't be overly ambitious on timelines or on funding. So you're going to promise to do all this work and you're saying we only want £4,000 for it. No, like really, just be realistic, really work this out, right? And the organizations that seem to do better in funding are those who have an understanding of what it takes to run a project, or what it takes. This is why like piloting, as I mentioned before, is a really good idea, okay, where you trial something out. And then you see, okay, oh, wow, you know what? One person in that session wasn't enough. We're going to need 1.5, or, we're going to need someone full-time, someone part-time. That's what I mean by 1.5. Or we're going to need, or that session for 1 hour wasn't just long enough. Let's make it a 2-hour session. So that realism, that practical experience really comes out in forms. Okay, and when it's, I think, and it might work, and we assume, that also comes out in forms. Even if you don't write like that, you can sense that, this is someone who's put this together, possibly not with enough experience of exactly, because the budget doesn't match up with the timeline, the delivery is out of sync, and really that's pretty much a sure path to sort of being rejected, because you've just not given confidence to the funders. Okay, things that we should do or good to do are the exact opposite, I guess, being concise and incredibly clear with what it is that you want to do. Align your project goal with grant objectives. Those 4 priorities are incredibly important, right? Use their words. One of the tricks I always sort of say to people is use the funder's language. Look at their priorities and on your answers, just use them words back, give the words back to the funders, right? They're talking about social cohesion. You say so. You mentioned social cohesion. They talk about involving the community. You mentioned involving the community in exactly the same way. We intend to involve our community, and then say how, right? This has been user-led. Young people have told us, right? The 2030 strategy is really important because a lot of what they want to give funding for, you can phrase your project in exactly the same way as what they want. So you really speak in the same language as them. So really, like, language is really important in bid writing, because that's what's ultimately coming out to them, is they're just reading your words. And remember, it's ultimately bid writing, right? When we break it all down, in the end of the day, it's people requesting money from people to support people. So, the thread throughout it all is people. There's human beings on the other side. They just want to be able to read a really good project that hopefully impacts them, right? In the way that it's written, it's clear. But it's also very aligned to supporting human beings on the other side that really need the help. And you're going to now illustrate who these human beings are that need the help and how they're going to need the help, and the way that you're going to develop this project that will help them in which way. Okay, and that's what you're ultimately doing. And if you can do that in a very concise and clear way, you're on really solid footing for bid writing. So aligning project goals with the grant objectives, every single funder, not just Awards for All, this is a key point for them, right? They're interested in young people. I mean, I've had projects where they're interested in young people. People have wrote about, all people, and I said, no, they only want to get, people are interested in writing to a particular, I had someone say to me, I want to write to this particular funder. I said, well, I had to look at it. I said, yeah, fine, we can have a look. I had to look at it. The funder only wanted to support groups who were supporting people with substance misuse. This organization wasn't. This organization was more around financial literacy and helping people out of debt. Noble project, completely wrong funder, right? So the best projects can be turned down because you've just not read the grant objectives. So reading, researching, all of those things, for me, like sometimes I say I spend more time reading the grant, and it is boring, I have to say, but highlighting and reading guidelines than I do on bid writing itself. Once you've understood what the funder wants, the writing part's the easy part, right? It's when you've just rushed on, opened the application form, logged in, started writing, then double guessing, checking again, coming back, not sure, or I'll write it anyway. A lot of funders receive applications, they just reject. Remember, 1 out of 10 applications are successful. 1 out of 10. You got 10% chance in any application to be successful. It's a very, very, very competitive industry. You do not want, and it's very time intensive, by the way. Bid writing takes a lot of time. So you do not want to waste valuable time, okay, writing applications that either do not meet the grant objectives or it's just a poorly constructed bid, okay? Because, you're just wasting really valuable resources, which is the time itself. So the 1 out of 10 chance, write the best application you can for the best funder for your particular project. Okay, so it's really important that synergy is there before you even start, that you've identified a funder that completely fits. Even things like I've had funders where, I've read the guidelines, are brilliant, that works, and then it says only projects in Wales. And I think, right on the last hurdle, because I could have just read the first 4 and jumped on and thought, that's it, we're going. But you've got to read everything. You've got to read everything and make sure you completely are aligned with the funder's priorities. Ensure all sections are completed thoroughly, obviously. Again, get someone to read, recheck, recheck. That's, has to be reread and proofread by other people. Check for grammar, check for spelling mistakes. Most funders are not overly particular about things like grammar, if things, but they are particular about everything being completed. Okay, so it doesn't have to be the best English, right? Bid writing is not really about the English itself. It's more about making sure everything's thorough, everything's completed, and everything's clear. That's more important than having, sort of superb English literature skills. It's not really that important. Okay. And we finished a little bit earlier than I anticipated initially. So it means that we've got a little bit more time for Q&A. So
thank you, Galib. I can see we have a few questions on our chat. I think it's from Lucy and Rowena. So Lucy's asking, we have a CIC with a board of 3 unrelated advisors. They aren't on Companies House, though. Does Awards for All require them to be?
No. So you should be okay. Did you mention, there was CIC?
Yeah, we have a CIC with a board of 3 unrelated advisors.
Yeah, now that should be fine. That should be fine. Yeah,
okay,
that's absolutely fine. Yeah,
okay,
you'd be eligible as long as they're completely unrelated. You'd be able to, and the addresses, indicate that they're separate as well. So if they're unrelated, different addresses, you're usually good to go.
Is that okay, Lucy?
Thank you. Yeah, it's the addresses that confuses me a little bit, because without them being on, so if they're on Companies House, then their addresses wouldn't be visible and therefore obvious that they're unrelated. But if they're well, I'm in the process of putting them on the website at the moment. But if they're on the website, but not on Companies House, That's the bit that I'm unclear on, whether that communicates strongly enough, or if I need to approach one of them and ask them if they can be on Company's House.
Yeah, usually they would be on Company's House. So would they not generally be on Company's House? Or you're in the process of putting them on Company's House?
Well, I understood that an advisor didn't necessarily need to be. It feels like
Okay.
they're in position, you know. So at the moment they're independent advisors, and I wasn't planning on having them on Company's House, but I will if it's a structure that needs to happen. And that can inform my conversations with them going forward. But at the moment, I didn't think they had to be, as long as I knew that they weren't unrelated and were visible on our website.
You might be okay, Lucy. I mean, on Charities Commission, the trustees' addresses are known. So it's a little bit more clear. And I've mainly worked with charities and not-for-profits. So Company's House, you are right, it's different in how their setup is. You might be okay to leave them off and maybe communicate that to what's role, or maybe they're used to seeing them that they're not on there and you are a CIC. So you might be okay. And I'd say that if you don't need to have them on, then maybe just leave them off and they understand that structure. But generally speaking, I've worked with charities who can clearly demonstrate that they're unrelated, but you should be fine.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Gali, we do have a question here from Rowena, who I think has left us now. She's got another meeting.
Yeah, sure.
So if you could put it in the chat, it might help. So she might be able to access it later.
I am still here, actually.
Oh, thank you, Rowena. Great. Okay, so Rowena's question is, we have more or less the same. Can one of them be the main contact or the senior contact, even if not on Company's House, so long as the other one is?
Yeah, so what they do is they ask you for the role of the individual that you've put down for the main contact, the senior contact. The role has to be really clear, and then you're okay. So, you know, what is the role of the main contact? And what would be the role of the senior? So what position do they hold basically within the organization? That's what they're more interested in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions for Galib?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you. Gary, thanks, that was brilliant. So can you spend 20,000 in one financial year?
Yes.
So that doesn't have to be spread over 2 years?
No, and it can be not in the financial year, it's any 12-month period.
It's any 12-month period, thank you. Okay. I've got one more. Can we get a copy of your sub-questions?
Yeah, I can share the presentation with you.
That would be great. And I've got one more question. So I get quite a lot of donations in kind, like space to work in from kind of community organisations. So like space costs might be less for me. Should I still include them in my budget? And should I kind of cost them like, you know, £1,000 worth of space costs over a 4-month period or something?
Will that directly affect your project?
Say that again?
Will that directly affect your project?
Well, I guess the spaces we might be working in, we might not have to pay for because we're being given them as a donation by another community organisation. Yeah,
well, I mean, why would you want to illustrate that in your project budget?
I guess it shows that we're in with the community. It shows that, you know, we're part of things, that people like what we're doing, that people want to support us, and they're supporting us in kind.
Yeah, I mean, I would it probably need a little bit more looking into your project particularly, but I would sort of mention that in my project brief rather than include it in the budget. I would keep the budget very simple and very clear and just ask for what you need to deliver that particular project.
So, but that wouldn't lead to what you were saying about the budget not adding up with what I'm saying in my project description.
Yeah, because what you'd be requesting is funds to run your particular project, right?
Yeah.
So the in-kind funds that you're getting, are you getting them now, for example?
Yeah, getting them at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not affecting this new project that you want to bring on board, right?
No, but I suppose it might be that, you know, somebody at community centre says, yes, you can use our space for this project and you can use it for nothing because we like what you're doing.
Yeah, generally you would. I mean, you know, if I had, so for example, if I had a community centre like that would want to, you know, allow us to run their sessions for free, you wouldn't include that in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's brilliant.
No worries.
The floor's still open, so if anyone else has any questions, please go ahead.
I guess I could ask another one if no one else has got one.
Go ahead.
So the bit that I feel like I really fall down on is my social media. Like, we did some really nice events in the summer, and I didn't put any social media up, and no one else did about them. I mean, there's nothing to do about that now. I've just got to get better at this. Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately, the world we live in. I mean, there was a funder that was a very large national funder based in London that I was had the privilege to sort of see how their operations work. And one of the things they mentioned was when a bid came in, bear in mind they're giving large grants, it's a multi-million-pound funder. They had a person employed, and their sole job was to research the social media
Wow.
of every application that came in. That, I mean, full-time work, full-time, right? So as soon as an application, she compiled a report on the effectiveness or their reach, if you like. And they're not looking for particular, like an organization's got like X number of followers in particular. They're more looking at, what sort of activities are these people doing, right? Who are they reaching? Who's attending? What sort of interaction, engagement are they getting? And I guess they want to get a sense of how real you are.
Yeah, I see that.
So that's why, and as it tapers itself down, because that was obviously a large national funder. Smaller funders will also have, maybe they don't place the same emphasis, maybe they don't have a full-time person doing it, but they will definitely have somebody who will look across and give a report of your work. And so where they're going to find this report of your work nowadays, social media. But I think with the awards forum in particular, maybe not as strict on it because they recognize it's fairly new organizations. So it won't maybe hamper you too much, Andy, but what it will definitely do is strengthen you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll put it on my to-do list. Big letters.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you, Galib. We have a question here from, is it Fumi? Fumi, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Galib. So we've won a grant with University College London Hospitals, and we're the charity carrying out some of the work. So it's to do a study for children with sickle cell. So we're running the PPI, but we need a researcher like full-time to help with the project. It's a year-long project. So I was thinking applying for that reason. Is that a good enough reason to apply, seeing as it's part of another project?
Yeah, being a part of another project's not an issue as much. I think you'd have to a little bit more. I mean, obviously, I'm not an awards for all person. One of the things you can do is ring or contact awards for all directly to run your project by them. The scope of what fits, obviously, as a bid writer, it's different. I'm not here on behalf of awards for all, so it's difficult for me to sort of, say exactly what would fit under awards for all and what doesn't fit under awards for all. As long as there's that community side to your project, you can show community involvement. And obviously you said you're a charity, right? That's doing that research.
Yeah, we are. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you could. So you've got to. It's got to be less around the academic side of things, more around the community side of things. And if you can see community involvement and user involvement, then you could have a chance. But it's more, I would say, like, the other thing that I didn't mention actually is that Awards for All do attend many Meet the Funders events. I don't know where you're based, but it's just always worth sort of watching out for those. They send a representative from Awards for All at those type of events. Reach out to them, speak to them, maybe even ring them, get their details, share your project details with them. They're the best people to speak to about whether your project fits. So they think they might be able to just advise that, do a little bit more of this or show your project in this light and you'll have a better chance. Right. Okay. So you just need to do, because it's a little bit technical, your project there, so it's just important to do a little bit more research around that before you actually apply.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Fumi. We have a question here from Lucy as well, Galib, which is, what is the feedback loop from the fund if it's rejected?
Yeah, again, it's varied across funders. Some funders won't give you any feedback as a policy, and they'll say that at the outset that we don't provide feedback. they'll just give you an email saying you've been turned down due to high applications or the number of quality applications. We're unable to give feedback. Awards for All generally are quite good because they understand that they're working with groups who might not have applied before. So they will give you feedback, Awards for All, on where they think you could have done better on your application. So they'll say things like, lack of clarity on the project goals. So they'll give you the areas which they think that you might have fallen down on or didn't score as highly on. So Awards for All are good like that, and they will share things with you. And it's just important to know that. And another thing to mention is that creating a bid library is really important. So once you've answered these questions that we've done here today, for example, they're just good to have. What will your project do? User involvement, having 150 words. Like, for example, as a bid writer, I've got, what does your organization do? Right, really simple. But funders ask this in various ways. So there's a funder that might ask it in 50 words, another that asks it in 150 words, and one that asks it in 250 words. I've got answers for each of those in that word count. And what I do is when I go into a new form tomorrow and they'll say, what does your organization do? And they'll say in how many words, I'll just go copy and paste that particular answer and put it straight in. Okay. So building this type of library is going to be really important for people who are bid writing. And I know sometimes it's not down to one person, it's spread across the team, but just having a central resource for that. And so you've got a chance there of having these stock answers that you can copy and paste and put into other applications to save time. Really important. So when you do fall down on something, you can go back and evaluate that particular answer or that particular section and say, okay, what was it about there that maybe we didn't highlight the user involvement enough, community engagement enough? Review that answer and say, okay, what else could we put into that particular section that could strengthen that particular application? So, doing your own feedback when it comes across like that. Sometimes you have to put the same application in a couple of times. It's okay. It's really not, and again, always networks, reach out to us and do a bit of a plug here for our services. We've got two services that we offer. One is to take care of the complete bid writing process for you. So we can write bids on your behalf. And these are all fee paying. And it's a subsidized fee that we charge. So we don't charge consultancy market rates. We are a charity ourselves, and we've been able to bring those costs really sort of down. That's number one. Number two is to take advantage of our bid review service, which is even cheaper. So you would write the bid, you would send it in to us, we would review that for you for a charge, and we would mention in there how to sort of strengthen it or what that doesn't make sense, or can that section there should be here, and this section put this in, or add this, or have you got this that you could add, or could you add more stats around this, or this is unclear. We'll give you those sort of guidelines, and then you can get that, you can sort of review that on your side again before you submit. So that again is, so just sharing it, even if it's not with ourselves, but, people in your team, reviewing it in-house, making sure it's really clear. All of these things really help. And then ultimately with bid writing, it's about experience. So doing it once, doing it the second time, doing it the third time. I had somebody came out to me and said, we've had 15 applications put in and every single one got rejected. And I was like, wow, there's something not quite right there, right? That you should get better. You should be able to get, like if you put in these applications, it is competitive, but the idea is that, if you do one and you get one and you get a feel and you get a sort of, you get there's a style and you can only learn that through experience. Sometimes you just have to do them. There's no shortcut. Sometimes you just have to do a number of applications. Just try them, just keep doing them. And then you get a feel of, okay, that, it says 500 words on an answer, and I can only get to 300. What more are they looking for? You'll get a feel of where you're falling short and thinking, what else can we put in this section? Why do they want 500 words? There's applications that want 1,000 words. Okay, so it's just experience, and it's just doing it sometimes, and maybe trying to reach out to people who have done more than you and getting feedback that way. But it's like I say, it's you've just got to do it. You've just got to, be brave and put in the applications and hopefully see how you get on.
Thanks, Galib. Yeah, I like that part. Be brave.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Khalid, how much is your bid review service?
Depends on your organizational turnover, I believe. But if you reach out to me, should have a slide here. There we go. That's my details.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can get in touch and we can sort of guide you in terms of the
Thank you.
prices. Yeah.
Any more questions? I don't think I can see any, but please do shout out if I've missed anyone. I don't think so. Okay.
You good?
Let me just check again with my IT skills are not that great. So
Is anyone here? Just can I ask if anyone's thinking of applying to Awards for All? Is that the like
Oh,
are
yeah,
people going?
yeah.
Yeah, Andy's going for it. Yeah, good. Let me know how you get on. It's really good to know. Yeah, it's a really good
Okay.
one to go for. It's a really it's you know, it's a really good first. If people haven't had experience with bid writing, this is what I'll tell them to start usually. You know, so it's a really good one. The good Awards for All it's a good application to start with.
Okay, I think I don't have any questions. So anyway, would like to thank you, Galib. Thank you so much for your insightful guidance. And thank you all for being here today. Good luck with your bid writing. So we're going to end the session now, but we look forward to welcoming you back to any more of our training sessions, which you can find on our VAC website. They always get updated weekly, so please do have a check out if there's anything else that you'll be interested in joining with us. And if you've got any suggestions of any other trainings that you'd like, just reach out to us as well. We'll try and help how we can. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys. Thank you. All the best. Take care.